This is the Golden Gate. It's the East Gate. It's known as the Mercy Gate to Jerusalem. As you can tell, it's been sealed up for a long, long time.
The different religions have different names. The Jews call the two arches together the Gate of
For
Mercy.
nearly 500 years, one gate in Jerusalem has not moved. Not during wars, not during earthquakes, not when empires rose and fell. But now, something is changing. No announcement, no explanation, just quiet movement where silence once ruled. And if the ancient warnings tied to this gate are true, this isn't a repair or an accident. It's a signal that the waiting may be ending. For nearly 500 years, one gate in Jerusalem has not moved. Not during invasions, not during earthquakes, not when empires rose, ruled, and vanished into history. Stone sealed against stone, silence against time. Generations passed, believing it would remain that way until the end of days. But now, something is changing. Not a public announcement, not a construction project, not an act of force, just quiet movement where stillness once ruled. A subtle shift. Enough to make those watching step back and ask a question that has not been asked in centuries. What if this gate was never meant to be opened by human hands? Because every ancient warning tied to this place says the same thing. When this gate begins to stir, history is no longer moving forward the way it always has. This isn't about stone or architecture. It's about timing. And the most unsettling part isn't that something is happening. It's that it's happening without permission, as if the moment itself has decided it can no longer wait. And that raises a far more dangerous question. Why now? The gate stands on the eastern wall of Jerusalem, facing the Mount of Olives. It is known by many names: the Golden Gate, the Gate of Mercy, Bab al-Rahmah. Different faiths, different languages, yet all point to the same truth. This gate is not like the others. Every other entrance into the old city has been rebuilt, restored, or reopened at some point in history. Walls were repaired, doors replaced, passages widened. But not this one. For centuries, this gate has remained sealed, not because it was damaged, not because it was forgotten, but because rulers were afraid of what it represented. Ancient traditions say this gate is reserved, set apart, waiting for someone who does not arrive like ordinary men do. It faces the exact place where prophecy says a figure will appear. Not from the west, not from within the city, but from outside, from the Mount of Olives. That detail alone has unsettled leaders for generations, because history shows a pattern. Whenever powerful men considered opening or altering this gate, plans suddenly stopped. Decisions were reversed. Orders were withdrawn. Not after protests, not after wars, but often without explanation. Some say it was politics. Others say coincidence. But those who study this gate closely notice something else. The silence around it is deliberate. And recently, that silence has begun to feel different. Heavier, as if the gate is no longer just waiting, but listening. Long before the gate was sealed, long before its stones were stacked into the wall, its purpose was already written. Not in one place, not by one voice, but across generations of prophecy. Ancient writings spoke of a ruler who would approach Jerusalem from the east, not as a conqueror at first, not with armies, but with humility. The path was clear. The Mount of Olives, the eastern wall, the gate facing mercy. History records that this path was once walked exactly as foretold. The moment passed. The city moved on. But the prophecies did not end there. They spoke of a second moment, a return, a day when the same ground would feel footsteps again, only this time with power that could not be ignored. That is why this gate became feared, not because of what it had done, but because of what it was said to do next. Across centuries, religious leaders warned rulers about this place. They said the gate was not meant for generals, not meant for kings crowned by men. It was reserved for someone whose authority did not come from the city, someone who did not need permission to enter. That idea alone was enough to unsettle empires, because if such a moment were real, then control was an illusion. Walls would not matter. Seals would not matter. And time itself would bend. That fear is what turned prophecy into policy, and prophecy into stone. Which leads to the question history never fully answers. If the gate was sealed to stop what was coming, why do the warnings say sealing it would only delay the moment, not prevent it? The sealing of the gate was not an accident. It was a decision made out of fear. In the 16th century, the ruler of Jerusalem ordered the eastern gate closed, stone packed tight, openings erased, no path left through. But closing the gate was only the first step. A cemetery was placed directly in front of it, row after row of graves, not for honor, but for prevention. The reasoning was simple and chilling. If prophecy were true, the one meant to enter through this gate would have to cross death itself to do so. To some, this was protection. To others, it was a challenge. From that moment on, the gate became more than architecture. It became a line drawn against destiny. And yet, history shows something strange. Every major attempt to interfere with the gate after that moment failed. Plans were approved, then abandoned. Orders were given, then quietly reversed. At times, entire armies stood in Jerusalem with the power to act. And still, they did nothing. No rebellion forced their hand. No disaster stopped them. They simply walked away. Those who recorded these moments often used the same language. Not the right time. Something felt wrong. We were warned. Warnings from where were never explained. Over centuries, rulers changed. Beliefs changed. Flags changed. But the outcome never did. The gate remained sealed. Which raises an uncomfortable thought. If so many powerful men wanted control over this place, and all of them failed, who or what was making sure they did? What surrounds the gate today is not chaos. It is silence. And that silence is what unsettles those who know the pattern. In a city where every stone is measured, guarded, and watched, this gate remains untouched. Cameras look away. Reports end early. Questions dissolve before answers form. Normally, even the smallest disturbance near the eastern wall would bring attention. Statements, investigations, explanations. But not here. When quiet reports began to circulate about unusual activity near the sealed chambers, there were no denials, no confirmations, just absence. Those nearby noticed subtle changes. Access points briefly opened, then closed again. Security routines altered without explanation. Some claimed sounds were heard from inside the sealed space. Not construction, not tools, voices. No official record exists of these claims. And that, to some, is the point. Because throughout history, moments tied to prophecy rarely arrive with permission. They arrive quietly, almost politely, and those in authority often choose silence, not because nothing is happening, but because acknowledging it would raise questions no one is prepared to answer. The gate itself has become a place people avoid discussing openly. Even scholars lower their voices when speaking about it, as if saying too much might accelerate something already in motion. The most troubling detail is not what is being said. It's what isn't. Because silence, when it appears at the same moment across different groups, is rarely coincidence. It is coordination, or caution. And that suggests the signs may not be public yet, but they are no longer hidden either. What makes this gate different from every other sacred place in Jerusalem is not disagreement. It is alignment. 3 faiths, 3 histories, 3 interpretations of the world, and yet all of them stop at the same doorway. In Jewish tradition, this gate is tied to the arrival of the Messiah, not a symbol, not a metaphor, an actual entrance reserved for a promised moment of restoration. In Christian belief, this same path is linked to a return, a second arrival, not quiet, not hidden, but unmistakable. And in Islam, the gate carries a name that reveals its purpose: the Gate of Mercy. Different doctrines, same expectation. That alone is rare. Throughout history, faiths have argued over land, texts, and authority. But here, something unusual happens. They pause. No one claims ownership of the gate. No one rushes to open it. Instead, leaders across traditions speak carefully, if at all, as if instinctively aware that this is not a place for human timing. Private meetings have been held, quiet discussions, not to debate theology, but to acknowledge a shared tension. A sense that waiting itself may be nearing its limit. When rival belief systems begin watching the same place for the same reason, history tends to shift. Because convergence removes coincidence. It suggests that whatever this gate represents operates beyond doctrine, beyond borders. And if that is true, then what approaches this gate does not belong to one people alone. Which leads to a question that unsettles even the most faithful observers. If every tradition agrees, this gate opens only once, what kind of moment would be worthy of it? For centuries, the gate did not change. Its stones held their place. Its seals remained firm. That consistency was part of the message. But in recent years, observers began noticing something different. Not dramatic, not obvious, subtle. Hairline shifts where none had been recorded before. Measurements that no longer matched older surveys. Doors that were said to be immovable showing signs of strain. Nothing officials would publicly acknowledge. Nothing dramatic enough to announce. Yet enough to unsettle those who knew how long the gate had resisted time. At the same time, unusual activity began to occur around the eastern wall. Security systems failed briefly, then returned to normal. Records were incomplete. Footage missing only from this location. People nearby reported sensations that were difficult to describe. A heaviness in the air. An awareness that lingered longer than expected. Some spoke of light where no source should exist. Others spoke of sound. Not noise, not echoes. Something closer to rhythm. Authorities offered no explanation. They did not deny the reports. They did not confirm them either. And that pattern is familiar to those who study moments just before history shifts. Because when something cannot be explained without raising larger questions, silence becomes the safest response. What matters is not whether every report can be proven. It is that the reports are increasing, and they are no longer coming from one group. They are coming from many, which suggests the gate may no longer be completely sealed, even if it still appears that way from the outside. What happens next is where waiting turns into pressure. Because prophecy, according to ancient understanding, does not arrive all at once. It builds, layer by layer, until resistance becomes meaningless. The land around the gate has begun to draw new attention, not from tourists, from watchers. Those who study patterns say activity around Jerusalem is intensifying in ways that feel familiar. Alignments once spread across centuries are now appearing within years. Religious calendars are entering unusual overlaps. Old cycles are returning. Moments long marked as significant are arriving again. At the same time, the ground itself seems restless. Small tremors, barely noticeable, but frequent enough to raise quiet concern. The Mount of Olives and the Eastern Wall share more than a view. They are connected beneath the surface. That detail matters, because ancient prophecy does not speak of gentle change. It speaks of division, of shaking, of moments so powerful they reshape what people thought was permanent. This is why the recent signs are not being dismissed by those who understand the warnings. Movement does not have to be dramatic to be meaningful. A shift is enough. History shows that before every major turning point, there is a narrowing of time. Events accelerate. Coincidences stack. Choices disappear. And suddenly, what once seemed distant feels close. Uncomfortably close. The gate still stands sealed. That much is visible. But beneath the surface, beneath the silence, something feels different. As if the long pause has ended. And what comes next no longer depends on whether humanity is ready. For many, the idea of prophecy brings fear, judgment, an ending. But the gate itself tells a different story. Its oldest name does not speak of wrath. It speaks of mercy. That detail is often overlooked, because mercy suggests restraint, delay, a choice to wait when action could have come sooner. For centuries, the gate's silence has carried that meaning, not abandonment, not absence, patience. Every year it remained sealed was another moment granted, another pause in the story. That is why the recent signs unsettle people in a deeper way. Not because they signal destruction, but because they suggest the waiting may be nearing its limit. Mercy, by its nature, is not endless. It exists for a purpose: to prepare, to turn, to awaken. Across traditions, the same quiet idea appears. When the gate opens, it is not the city that is judged first. It is the world that must reckon with what it has done, with the time it was given. This is where hope and fear meet. Hope, because mercy still stands. Fear, because mercy does not stand forever. And now, after centuries of stillness, the gate no longer feels dormant. It feels alert, as if the question is no longer whether prophecy is real, but whether the moment of mercy is about to give way to the moment of arrival. The gate is still sealed. At least, that is what the eye can see. Stone remains in place. The wall still stands. Nothing appears open. And yet, the stillness no longer feels complete. For 500 years, the gate did not respond to time. Wars passed. Empires collapsed. Generations lived and died beneath its shadow. But now, the signs are no longer spread across centuries. They are clustering, movement where there was none, silence where answers should be, alignment where division once ruled. History shows that prophecy does not arrive like an announcement. It arrives like pressure, invisible at first, then impossible to ignore. Those who sealed this gate believed they were preventing an event. But ancient warnings say something very different. That sealing the gate was never meant to stop what was coming, only to preserve the moment of its arrival.